Chapter 20. That Hideous Perdition. Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth gather themselves, and the rulers conspire against Yahweh and against his anointed Messiah, saying, "Let us tear off their bonds, and cast away their cords from us." He that sits in the heavens laughs. Yahweh shall have them in derision. Then he speaks to them in his wrath, and in his fury he terrifies them. Psalm 2. Tara had a severe twitch, scowling at all the aristocratic men of the Bohemian Club, who she planned to bomb. Her grimace was hidden behind a black and white silk mask. Though women were not members in this sexist Club Grove party in the middle of the Redwoods, everyone else wore masks like hers for the cremation of care. Their masks were of various styles, carnival, elaborate to plain, that covered half the face. Here, they could conceal their gender, but Tara knew they were mostly men. 100 masks, and 100 pairs of eyes trying to see what lay behind them. She wore bleak black clothes, making her appear as bulky as a man, so none would detect her. The woods were dark and humid at night, the light coming from a series of blazing candles on the long oak tables set on decks. Lights hung in a canopy above, held by wooden beams. If one didn't look closely, the grove would have appeared a natural pond with a horseshoe theater, a superstructure of 5 rows of wooden viewing platforms, holding up a dominating 30-foot-tall crude owl statue, covered in patches of moss and lichen. In the orange candlelights, the owl loomed in ochre shadows, a phallic monolithic formation that smelled of damp marshland. The redwood trees resembled colonnade pillars of a Roman forum. The rock statue wasn't made of living rock. Tara knew the owl formation was fake. Within the statue, an electrical circuit connected to light sources, illuminating the grove's outdoor bar. She knew this. She'd strategically planted 2 bombs behind the owl. Tara had always been enraged by toxic masculinity. These men always sexist about male benefits, like cheap insurance. This grove writhed with the filth, like the muck in that man-made pond, and the bleak sounds of slimy frogs that croaked cacophonously in the night, under the quicksilver of the full moon. These men were greedy toads. Tara had come to a desperate position now, that the only way for her to survive under her Aes Sidhe handlers of the Horned Ones was that she had to become the aggressor. The time of acting passive and weak was over. Here, at Bohemian Grove, the Horned Ones of the left-hand path, wielders of chaos magic, ideally demanded secularists, Republicans, and clergymen to disseminate their agenda. They had used her as a pawn, a broken thing. But now Tara had taken the responsibility to end their darkness. They put ideas in her head to shoot up a school, so now they were about to get a taste of their own medicine during the Bohemian Grove cremation of care. As Tara checked that the detonator remote to set off the bombs was safe in her pocket, she saw the only women in the grove. Heteronymous, likely hired high-maintenance prostitutes. They were men's toys. The idea of makeup was a sexist expectation for women to always beautify themselves. These women's bodies were only here to be penetrated by nymphomaniacs. Tara twitched when greasy gazes of intoxicated congressmen, priests, musicians, and oil barons came upon her. She was grateful for the disguise. Tara had to get her timing right with the detonation, making sure 3 more bombs were planted next to redwood trunks close to the tables, so all these infuriating frog-like men could pay. She did not need a gun, but pyrotechnics. Once the fireworks at the end of the cremation of care ceremony went off, the bombs would go off instantaneously. Every one of these white men, many who were rich, selfish, and anti-women's rights, would die in their own revelry. Silently, Tara watched the servants, youths serving wine and beverages long-sufferingly for the elite men. Wearing body-tight pants and snug blouses barely opaque, suggesting what it concealed, the women moved with grace, swan-necked, smelling of wonderful perfume, no doubt to arouse these men. How sad that they could be taken advantage of by these modernists' materialistic animals and get away with it. Tara scowled deeply and twitched as a middle-aged blond man drunkenly lumbered off chuckling with his friends, with wine in one hand, pulled down his pants with the other, urinating into the bushes. Tara twitched, shivering with chills, and turned away. On those tables, the men were feasting upon cheesy curds, the sights of the oozing liquid pouring into cups, and over meals aggravated her nausea. The men shrugged, watching her, no doubt wondering who she was, downing the curds in greedy gulps, wiping mouths unconsciously with a napkin, as if they were clean and innocent. Tara was shocked to find a diminutive youthful woman with blonde hair in a single braid wrapped around one shoulder, offering her a tray of wine in golden goblets, shining with splendor and promise. Holding out a gold cup of crimson drink, the waitress smiled behind the mask that covered only the upper part of her face. A smile that suggested something more. The disguise worked well on this woman who looked in her early 20s. Tara took one gold cup filled up with its portion of the beverage, with no intention of drinking. It might appear untrusting, or worse, bad manners would be deadly here. If she refused altogether, she wouldn't need to worry about something being slipped into her drink. Tara ground her teeth in impatience for the ceremony to begin. As she observed her surroundings, she saw a tall, stout man with red hair cut like an Amish country farm boy, swathed in a dark cloak. He rounded a table, grabbing his own wine goblet with his left hand, nodding at the serving girl. The man wore no mask. Bowing a curtsy, the servant girl looked into the red-haired man's eyes, smiling, with blank eyes, doll eyes, eyes more dead than death. Tara twitched and sweated. She tried to ignore this man, who she didn't know what he was all up about. If he irritates me, I will give him such a hard time that he will avoid me. A good amount of people awaiting the cremation of care had not bothered with a disguise beyond their masks. Their clothes told too much. Standing on the other side of the wooden platform at the pond's edge, a prominent man in an expensive navy blue suit with sunglasses and a fedora hat spoke kindly to a figure, impossible to say whether a man or a woman, clad in a gray cloak. Most ad hoc men laughing with one another at the tables had a nervous energy for the cremation to commence. It was never about status to come to Bohemian Grove, but about one's sensual ingenuity and who one had access to. If one had an unconventional, abnormal talent in something, they could escape into the wilderness and misbehave with a like-minded bunch. Such notions made Tara's shoulders jerk. She only knew Aes Sidhe handlers that had been previous members at the Bohemian Grove, and the handler's membership at the atheistic Temple of Set gave her discreet access here. Suddenly, Tara's eyes narrowed. She was surprised to find a single gorgeous and stately woman with black lipstick and golden eyes, covered in a woolen cloak, with her back against a redwood trunk nearby. Her long honey-brown hair and ringlets tumbled down her exposed low neckline, wearing dark clothing. What on earth was this woman doing with a neckline so low? Her amber eyes were hawk-like, all-knowing. It made Tara twitch, thinking, How many Aes Sidhe are here? At the periphery of her vision, Tara marked the red-haired man next to her. As he removed his hood, Tara gawked at the robotic arm from the fingers to the elbow, rising from his capacious sleeve, metal tendons working as bony fingers. The man who wore no mask shocked Tara. He wore an emotionless, plain face that had seen much discipline. He had a large mustache and, most of all, turquoise eyes, the markers of an indigo child and an Aes Sidhe. Tara stared at his robotic right arm, sinking back into the den of the sleeves slowly. Aes Sidhe had implants in their brains, so their masters would control them at will. One reason Tara had gone rogue. Aes Sidhe were crazy, unpredictable people. "I see your eyes and your hair," the man said softly. Then he did sign language, the symbol for, "You're not the only one." Tara went to speak, but her mouth could not emit any sounds. She signed back, saying, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" "Whatever you plan to do," the Aes Sidhe signed. "Delay. It will not go well." There was an energy of odium dormant in this man, and Tara immediately disliked him. All men were the same. They were deceitful, selfish monsters. "Just tell me your name, man," Tara said aloud, deeply and harshly. "What are you? What do you want?" She couldn't bear not being able to genuinely test someone's motives and trust. Too many times Tara had been betrayed. Then, revealing only a few bionic fingers from his right sleeve surreptitiously, the man signed, "I'm Ergetlam, Silverhand." Another one. Another one driven mad by the sins of the world. Ergetlam raised his dull gold goblet of wine in his fleshy hand. Tara started, perfunctorily raising her own, connecting cups with a delicate chime. Suddenly, a burning smell, a hideous and pungent aroma strong enough to gush into Tara's nose, reeked of dry vomit. Men at the table started gagging and coughing. A loud, very loud, roar thundered through the grove. It was of a man, with a scream too deep to be human. A dwindling belch followed, and then the sound of many flaying branches. "Holy crap, what was that?" Tara's heart roared in her breast as the wraith in the woods raged, coming closer and closer. The party ceased, men gawking at the huge raucous among the shrubs outside in the night, branches snapping, the booming of something enormous emerging. Leaves trembled as a hulking shape stumbled from the darkness of the woods, grunting sonorously, slumped and covered in hair. Black bears were common here in this neck of California, so Tara found it strange that all the men and people ceased their party and gazed, until the bear stood up bipedally. Covered in dark motley gray, arms a forearm's length longer than normal, reaching below stumpy knees, humps bulging from its shoulders, this creature was not a bear. It was a grotesque Neanderthal or a gorilla, but much larger than any from the zoo, with a beard all over its face, no neck, and a V-shaped body. Its amber eyes reflected the light from the candles, emitting its own sheen out of leathery ridges. Tara held her breath in fear and awe. The Sasquatch scowled menacingly at the humans. Then 4 more giant Sasquatch appeared unaccountably into the light from the owl statue itself, silently. The sight shocked Tara. 4 hairy apes walked as if gliding. Their heads did not bob over the contours of the wooden steps, but remained stilled. Manlike, head and shoulders taller than the tallest man, and muscular, with very long arms swaying, they marched in dense, eerie muteness across the wooden superstructure. Hairy, with huge feet, Everyone shied back from the stomach-turning blend of man, monkey, and ape, humanity twisted and altered. One had a cone-shaped head, covered in lush onyx hair with long, thick lips that stretched on a face sagging the space between upper lip and flat nose. The other, hunched and old with a pudgy face and distinctive eyebrows, had long hair splayed flatly over its apish head. One resembled a shaggy dog, with a muzzle pushing out of its face, with no forehead and possessing fangs. The last looked almost human, a black man terrified with eyes too round, too large, too dark. The loud Sasquatch gazed at his giant brothers, face in a rictus snarl. The 5 hominids in total walked up towards the owl statue, feet thumping against the wood, stressed under their weight, with their backs to Tara, and bowed. At that moment, 2 cowled entities appeared from the shadows on either side of the owl statue, where Tara had placed the bombs. Distress afflicted her. "Oh, crap. They saw the bombs." Light around the entities vanished. They were garbed in black, blacker than night, a void in space-time. Light appeared to suck into their bodies, and their garments hung still as they moved with viper grace. Those voids of faceless cowls regarded everyone one by one. A violent shiver made Tara jerk under that eyeless look. There was a smell of sweet incense that purified the air from Sasquatch stench, and the smoke candles on the long oak tables before the ochre statue of the phallic owl. Dirges of frogs creaked obstinately, infesting the night like a plague unseen from mortal eyes. "The owl is in its temple." An eerie voice came from the air, one of the entities, rasping like decayed leaves. "On your bellies." A metal sound rung in Bohemian Grove. Rage and fear filled Tara as she saw all the men and servants follow the Sasquatch. They dropped to the ground, leaving their drinks and food on the table, pulling out chairs to bow on their knees as if at church. Tara grinded her teeth. "The bombs, why aren't they—" Just as Erget Lam moved to show obsequiousness, Tara dropped, placing her undrunk goblet on the floor, face down, grunting as she bruised herself on the wooden boards. She felt thwarted and red-handed. "At last," a Cyrenian feminine voice rose from one of the entities. "The new world order shall spread democracy around the world." "Hear," the other dark male voice yelled. "He who has an ear to hear what the Spirit says to the churches." The air became electric. The frogs shrilled, enhanced by the fiery candles burning brighter and hotter. Words sprang from Tara's lips, and she heard 100 other voices, breathy with fear, speaking the same against the floor. Her mind raced and raced, faster than the foreign words pouring out of her mouth unconsciously. A universal power implanting streams of intent and will on her in its cruel, cold grip. "Great Architect, the one who was and is not and yet is, everlasting, the great Lord of the wild beasts, do I serve in humility to you, O eternal beauty, Lord of the dark earth. Satan and the demons are not real." Tara convulsed. No, she had silenced the problematizing voice long ago. "Caretaker, animal and powerful, shimmering scales, dragon of Tartarus, hail to you. For you shall take back what is rightfully yours, Prince of the Air, the one who was and is not and yet is. The dragon was spun by God in the bottomless pit for 1,000 years. Silence, hypocrite. I'm not religious. I need to kill all the exploiters." Tara finished the creed she did not know but had cited, panting and gasping. She was adrift in tsunami of endless pain and uncertainty. These morons prepared to die had no idea they were enslaved minions of an evil, cosmic, and wrathful power. The energy from the owl, everywhere. Terra knew this same power could destroy nations. A bizarre interlude. An orchestra began to play, trumpets and pianos, jarring to Terra that she twitched, sweating profusely. "Bohemians and priests, rise," called the female entity after the interlude. The 5 Sasquatch rose like megaliths behind the 2 dark entities, not moving. "The arms race has begun, so we must obey the words of America. And the only way that must be done—" A suspenseful silence rose as Terra rocked up on her knees. "Is to make peace with the Alliance." Shock rose from the crowd of Cabal men. Susurrations of bewilderment seized them. Terra honestly had no sense of the gravity of the statement. Only she could reckon it as the extreme right seeking to unite with the extreme left. "We, as a broker of peace in the Middle East," the male entity in black said, stalking down one platform. "We need cohesion." "Is this cohesion about American democracy, my Aeon?" another man said from the oak table. What was an Aeon? For Terra, it was difficult to discern who had spoken behind the crowd wearing masks. Aeon appeared to be the honorifics for these bizarre specters. "Our interests are free enterprise. Oil, the petroleum resources, must be the objective." "Frankly, I think the Alliance should piss off. We must be focusing on security matters to make this country great again." Another slurring male voice. It made Terra twitch. His heavy accent dripped with toxic filth, and he had floppy white blonde hair over his mask. "Anyone that tries to break this law will pay." "We have enough access to oil, fools," the male Aeon snapped. "We need a better civil defense department for the United States to deter Muslims and Arabs. And yes, democracy, culture, and human rights is the answer in this war. Most of the movement archives in the Middle East are restricted from our fellow researchers because Islam is fundamentally undemocratic. Islam is only part of the great threat that looms against us, and we must unite against the galactic tyrant and all his minions." "My lord," the first politician spoke up, "what if it's not in Alfred Bonner's interests to make peace with us, the Cabal?" "Bonner supports democracy, human rights, and free enterprise," the male Aeon clipped. "We need to embrace his reasonable strategy for now and stop acting with vitriolic division. We tend to see our politics, that humans need to be constrained to function, as a way to reason. But a greater enemy is upon us. The galactic tyranny of Allah is here." A wave of confusion rumbled through the men. This unity with the Alliance is only a trade-off, not an ultimate solution. We only need to do this to succeed retrieving what we need, the male Aeon said. "But Bonner thinks he's an unconstrained essential planner of a virtuous utopia. He wants to destroy us all." Voices arose in protest. "So," Terra thought, "the Cabal is implying the Golden Mare mentality then. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Islam and Arabs are being scapegoated with all the world's problems. It's how the secret societies make war against the galactic tyrant, Allah." "Operation Enduring Freedom is for the sake of the people," a politician muttered. "The war would take years to fight. It's a war on ideologies that span multiple states. We must do all that is necessary to win. So I agree. Listen to Bonner, then discard him later." Terra growled under her breath, twitching all the more. Didn't she, too, commit to the exemplar of whatever was necessary to kill off misogyny? "What are you doing?" A condemning voice grated her soul. "Bombs are bastards already, you failure." Tara's body went stiff and cold. She felt invisible, like a watcher at the cinemas, existing to only gaze at her life playing by. Not participating, not experiencing, not engaging. Just watching everything go by, passively. There had been a long time when Tara had let her life take her on wherever it went. It destroyed her soul. And now Tara had changed. She let herself be punished by her fate. She had become a weapon. She had to take explosive action. "But if Bonner fails to concede us," the female Aeon called, striding towards Tara and Erget Lam, "we must take independent, coercive action." Tara twitched nervously, her heart beating in fear. Her breath was audible. "It's incontrovertible that Hussein has nuclear chemical weapons in his arsenal and is ready to use it. Hussein is the tyrant. Islam is dangerous and behind the attacks on the World Trade Center." Her hand slipped into her pocket for the detonator button. Might as well die as the most dangerous weapon around. She pressed it, closing her eyes. Nothing happened. A loud beak-like snap came from the male Aeon. "Excellent, my children. That is why you shall not fail to bring Bonner to our side." Tara opened her eyes, sweating. Dread engulfed her, numbing her. The bombs. "Offense operations are the only option, then, Aeon Abraxas?" the first speaker said. "The risk of failure is too high," Abraxas, the male Aeon, replied. "Yes, launching a war against the Alliance at a time when arms are needed is suicide. But this war in Iraq, we can use it. Now, I command you, my time is short. Proceed." The Wraith raised an arm grandly, sweeping it across the audience. Abruptly, the frogs ceased altogether, and there was silence in the woods. Even the air had stilled, with the most malevolent dread seeming to manifest out of the unseen aether. That very same dread Tara knew when incapacitated in bed before a dark being. She shivered uneasily, eyes drifting to the only other woman in the grove with enigmatic golden eyes who was not a waiter, hand covering the round of exposed bosom. Her eyes were wide, nodding madly in fear or in ecstasy, as if something invisible were berating her face to face. She stood struck, in a paralysis of the limbs. Sometimes she seemed to give a reply, but Tara heard not a word from those tar lips, only weak grunts. Suddenly, she arched backwards, brown hair dangling from her scalp, standing on her toes, convulsing. She could not see why she did not totter, unless something unseen held her. Then, just as abruptly, she planted herself back on her feet, nodding and bowing, her eyes glazed and face pallid. Hissing out through his gritted teeth, Erget Lam too went rigid, blue eyes rolling back to whites in his head, nodding vigorously, making Tara's heart thunder so much she was sure it would burst. The two Aeons stood only a few feet away from her, their garments melting into the shadows as if they were literally the absence of light. Tara's hand desperately crushed the button of her detonator remote in her pocket. It didn't work. The bombs had malfunctioned. Fiery fury burned her soul. Tara cursed grievously, hitting herself. Everyone was being sent commands. All the despicable Cabal men in the grove who lacked accountability for their pathological sins were lifted up on their toes, undergoing similar convulsions. Tara wished she could know what evil force transmitted orders, but she could detect tantalizing clues. Blanching faces, thrashing heads, gasps, arching backs, and nods. Orders for the person, worded so no one else could hear. So Tara braced herself. She itched to run away. "Viance, a bomb's going off," she thought in panic, sweat dripping down her neck, breast, and forehead. "Your plan was so easily detected, Tara." A foreign female voice pierced through her consciousness, and suddenly Tara writhed. Full, evil, malevolent energy overcame her, and she whimpered, screwing shut her eyes. Her knees gave way then, and she awoke, found herself on her face, overcome by both fear and compulsive force. Her jaws started to quiver, so she clamped them tight. The twitches were uncontrollable now, like coughs racking her being. Her neck failed to keep her head upright as she panted. She refused to grovel as a worm. A blistering blob, a blue, all-seeing eye, appeared in her vision, consuming everything in her sight. She could still see the grove, but the blob of blue grew denser. Shooting up on her knees, Tara felt as if her forehead were splitting open and her eyes pushed back into her skull. The pain was so intense, she felt she was coming apart from the seams. Fire was everywhere in her body, in every cell. She roared a silent scream. "Are you faithful to us, Tara?" the cold, evil female voice said. I'm faithful." Tears ran down her cheeks. "Now, you are a unified plurality, a kinship, Tara and Ergetlam. Bonner and his group will try to turn you, but your best defense against his efforts is to concentrate on the future, for yourself and for the sake of North America." Raped by the diabolical power, the disbelief within her marked with a tuition, an order. Tara whimpered, yielding to the voice of obtrusive command. She had been conditioned to detect weaknesses in those she served, but now she found herself preceded. The first rule of liberation was to search for weaknesses in others, a chink, so she could pry and probe and influence that individual. If these aeons were her masters now, and they had no fallible weakness. Frowning, Tara convulsed violently, gasping and moaning. Her forehead felt it was being gouged into by a tool. She wanted to scream for the anguish to stop. She would become the crushed scapegoat, bearing the weight of all her sins and the world's sin, who hated her. Her world turned upside down in a pool of blood. "Take care, lest your heart be deceived. People who you least expect will constantly try to persuade you on their side. You must not compromise, Tara. What the Cabal can have is informal power, and we can use it to remove the Alliance. Go with Ergetlam and loot the Baghdad Museum in the darkness, once America has taken the city." As the commands were being relayed, Tara realized her mouth was sagging open. The thrall of success. A new mission, without a handler to coerce her. Freedom. It motivated her, enticed her grim, deprived soul. Freedom was good to the eyes, to steal, ransack rich, ancient artifacts. But how could she possibly get on a plane to Iraq to do that if the security detected her guns? For some reason, she felt indifferent next to Ergetlam to this order. Indifferent to evil. A familiar warmth entwined over Tara. One metallic crunch of it. It felt odd as the warmth became heat, and even as it passed, Tara felt aware of herself, aware of Barbello, the female Aeon. She swayed, her head light, muscles watery. She saw the world blowing apart in 1,000 supernovas, piercing motes flashing, tugging at her soul, images spinning in her mind within a turquoise-purple galaxy, dwindling into the distance before she could barely grasp what was happening. In a sky of saturated clouds was a Coruscant nebula, shimmered like 1,000 cities in the atmosphere, ruling oppressively, devastating the earth with mighty katabatic winds. Fire rained from the skies in lightning forks. The moon and stars fell. The earth became lava, and the dead walked. The rock rent apart from the planet's raging frenzy. She was caught up in the tyrannical nebula and saw a ramp made of wood reaching a giant glowing blue orb of flame. Climbing up the ramp was a lamb. It was covered in crimson, limbs writhing doggedly, smearing a wake of blood. The victimized lamb trembled, anguished, arching its head, dying. The baby animal brayed and suffered, a cry rising up to the altar of galactic tyranny. A torrent of water unseen collided into her. Tara couldn't nearly remember who she was or what she was. "Some revelations are too important to be known," the voice, now androgynous and serpentine, roared. "Now you see what we are up against. The galactic tyrant is a weak, dead animal. We have freedom. We have victory. Carnutes, the Horned Ones, mobilize!" Tara squatted in an empty Bohemian grove and blinked. Wherever she looked, the blob in her vision of Barbello's presence haunted her mind. The wraith stood right over her, laying her hands over her head. Hesitantly, Tara straightened. "As you command, Shining One," Tara said hoarsely. "It shall be done." She got up, turned around, broke into a walk, then a jog, and once the dark wood consumed her, she sprinted. But forever at the back of her mind was the presence of Barbello, enmeshed somehow with her soul. And ultimately, she could sense Ergetlam too, marked by the same being. They were Carnutes now, the Horned Ones, hunters of the dark, friends of the shadow.